Hello, this is Jamie.
And this is Heather, and welcome to Using Our Inside Voice, a podcast where we awaken to the extraordinary meaning of everyday mundane life by passing it through a particle collider of different and differing perspectives. So today we're talking about, solstice is tomorrow, right? And the energy has been absolutely, I don't know how it's been for you guys, but everything around me seems to be going haywire.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like we're going to undo everything so that there is absolutely no chance that anything is going to look the way it had before.
Right.
Sorry about it. It's just not gonna. And I can appreciate that to some extent because I if I take a look over everything and say, if I had it my way, would I want it to be like this? I'd probably want to keep parts of it, but I wouldn't want to keep all of it. Certainly not. There are a lot of things in the realm of change that I'm like, yeah, I could use change in this department. So from the spiritual end of things, I'm looking at everything that's going on and going, yeah, I'm cool if it's not like that anymore. However, there's the flip to that, which is the very human in the world coping with that big change side.
Or
And
not coping.
And that part is I'm having a hard time. I'm having a real hard time with that this year. But I am still left with a very odd sort of calm is still there, which I'm leaning into as much as possible because that's pretty much, that's what I have right now.
Right.
And the calm says it's going to be really fun to play this episode back same time next year. Because it's nothing is going to look the same, but in a good way. And I'm like, okay, I'm down for that. I can get behind that. So yeah, I have no idea how it's going to. I have the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air kind of ruminating in my head, the flip turn upside down portion. But that's kind of, it's like, or they're showing me snow globe. We're gonna take that sucker and we're gonna shake it. And it's going to turn into a whole new scene. Like,
well, the way I'm seeing it right now is it feels like gremlins or imps are untying everybody's shoes. And then they're tying this person's shoe to that person's shoe, or some are just left untied and everybody's tripping over their laces or not realizing they're tied together and falling down and blaming the other person. I mean, it feels like serious chaos. Like, I don't know. I don't know why it feels so chaotic. It is not happening directly to me currently.
It's happening pretty directly to me.
It is happening pretty directly to you. Yeah. And I know that I'm taking on energy from those around me. You're not the only one it's happening to.
Sure.
There are quite a few people that I'm looking at going, holy shit balls. What the fuck? How bad is it? And I think that the big fear wave is how bad is it going to get? When you're facing a situation that could be scary, I think that the fear wave is how bad is it going to get?
Sure. And I can totally identify with that. I have had those thoughts and feelings come up. I am trying my best to mitigate them with the calm that seeps in, like
oh look, fear, lean into the calm.
Like the calm is like a little itty bitty teeny tiny little one of those like lifesaver style little flotation devices that's being thrown out amongst
You're just
the storm that's
hugging it for dear life.
I'm like, please, can I just want to, you're not really big enough to go around me, but if you could just support me for a little bit longer, I'd really appreciate it. Thanks.
And the question, and that begs the question, like, we got that message that you're coming into port, and everything felt so quiet and blanketed in calm, eerie calm. And it wasn't exactly a comforting message in its entirety. The message itself was comforting, but the feeling that went with the message was a little bit like, we don't know where we are. We may not even know who we are. We certainly don't know how we are. What does it mean to come into port when you have absolutely no anchor because you tossed your anchor away last year so that you could get here in the first place? It was ballast, and you tossed all that ballast out. Did you toss away too much ballast? Did you get rid of too much weight? Do you need an anchor now? And how do you create that anchor? There are a lot of questions in my mind as I look at what everybody is going through right now.
Even with all the stuff that I'm going through right now, I still feel like I have more ballast to shed.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I feel like God, I'm going to use a lot of really weird. The visuals that I'm getting are just odd visuals, but maybe it'll resonate with somebody. I feel like a pumpkin that's yet to be like gored out for the fun of like either making a fun pie or a decoration or something. You know what I mean? It's like, it feels like there's stuff that's been so deeply ingrained that like, like I had a couple epiphanies a few days ago that were like, whoa. Like I had gotten bits and pieces of certain things before, but all of a sudden they were kind of connected together and then like brought back to a place that I was completely unaware of. And I was like, ooh, okay. All right. Like that's something new to deal with.
Is it safe to ask like for an example?
So how can I all right. So let's start with this. So because energy has been funky and I've been in not a great spot, I kind of, this is usually the time when if I don't feel like I'm getting anything immediately, I usually kind of delve into some of the sources that I've been collecting
getting
over
anything
time.
Meaning answers?
Yeah, meaning clear direct answers from guides or, a clear intuitive hit of some sort. If I'm not getting anything super clear and specific that I feel like is going to be helpful in bringing me out of a space that I don't feel really good sitting in. Like it's okay to have things come up and come into your awareness, but the tricky part is not like swimming in it. You know what I mean? And sometimes that can be really hard to do because some of the stuff that's coming up is like really difficult shit to deal with. So, because I tend to be one of those people that collect a lot of resources, when I get into a space where I feel like, okay, all of the regular tune-ins maybe, and it can just be my energy. My vibration is too low right now to connect effectively with my guides or with my higher sense of clarity, because I'm just kind of stuck in a very mired place. And until I get some sort of sign or signal that's my whoop, okay, I need to pop back out of that because here's my little lifeline to like pull me back out of that situation. So I've done that over the last few weeks. I've kind of gone back through, all of my audiobook titles that I've had stashed for years and kind of looking back there and going, okay, is anything popping out at me? And is anything popping out at me? And I did have one pop out at me. And it was really interesting because as we've said several times, um, you know, the messages aren't always like earth shattering. It's not like, oh, this is brand new information and wow. But sometimes it's information that's coming through in a way where you'll get a new facet of something that you already know. And that's enough to kind of light you up in a different way and help you kind of, come out of those dark spots. And for me, over the last couple weeks, I started listening to a book by Caroline Myss, or I think when they pronounce it, it sounds more like Mace. It's Myss. That's her last name. And she's been around for forever. She's a very cute little older lady. And the title that I was listening to was Advanced Energy Anatomy, which, for the most part, I know most of what she was talking about, the things that she was referencing. It wasn't new information to me, but there were certain things that she brought up within the conversation of energy medicine, and part of it is, dealing with the chakras and how we work with energy that's coming in. And she did a lot of, speaking about like manifesting and creating and why we get stuck in the places where we tend to get stuck. And then she also introduced 4 archetypes and various kind of sides of those 4 archetypes. And so the 4 archetypes are the child, the prostitute, the saboteur, and there's one more, and it's right on the tip of my tongue. Come on, come to me. It's like, I'm sure as I start talking about it, it'll come up. But the first thing that she kind of did was to introduce you to the shadow aspect of all of those archetypes. And the shadow aspects play a big role. Like the shadow of the child is I can't take care of myself. I need somebody to do it for me. I'm not capable. There's all of these little things that kind of creep in. For the prostitute, we think about it in a very particular way because of the way that word has been portrayed to us. But it's neither feminine nor masculine. It's both. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with sex. It has more to do with money. And that's kind of the shadow side is, where can I, how far am I willing to go to get money?
Right.
How far am I willing to sell myself out for the cash?
Right.
And, and how honest are we being with ourselves, surrounding that? Because that, it's like if fear creeps up and it's, oh my God, I don't know if I can make it without, X amount to cover this particular lifestyle that I have created for myself. How willing are you to push past your boundaries of, what would I consider to be ethical? What would I consider to be joyful or fulfilling? Am I willing to give up all of those things just for the cash? Because, that's kind of giving into that portion of it.
Kind of like making a deal with the devil.
Exactly. And let's see, the saboteur, of course, is, the saboteur can help you. The light side of the saboteur can help you a little bit and remind you of instances where, maybe there was some sort of aspect of what you were doing that wasn't very safe for you. And that energy can kind of alert you and go, just make sure you're aware of the situation. But that shadow side is going to come in and go, oh man, here we go again. It's that you're not going to want to do that.
It's
Just,
going to smack it out of your hands is what it's going to do.
Put it out of, or coax you out of it somehow,
Mm-hmm.
And it's really annoying me that I can't come up with that additional. There's 4. It makes me so. It doesn't really make me angry. I was going to say angry. It doesn't make me angry at all, actually. It makes me frustrated. But that's all. I'm trying to think of what it is. Shoot. It's totally going to come to me later. I'm going to go, oh, dang.
We'll put it in the insights.
Right onto my tongue.
It'll be there for them.
We'll put it in the insights. But it was really interesting to kind of go through different situations with her. She was using different situations from either her seminars. She's done, tons of speaking engagements. She's written, God, I don't know how many books. But it was really interesting to hear the different kinds of situations that some of her clients had been in. She's a psychologist. She's a medical intuitive also. And she kind of started out in the more metaphysical side of things, doing medical intuitive readings, because that was kind of her specialty before, was like in the medical field. So that's kind of how she got started in writing books and doing seminars and things like that. But she gave an instance of, when she would go into kind of remote view or into like their medical issues, she met those archetypes when she was doing that work. They would always kind of come through, and that would be, something that she would pass on to them. Do you know that you're carrying this particular aspect with you right now? And that's something that's feeding into the issue that you have. And so she gave an interesting one about the prostitute archetype, which I thought was really kind of funny because the gal that she was talking to, once she brought it up, the woman was like, oh yeah, I know.
Mm-hmm.
She had absolutely zero qualms about it. And it was funny because Carolyn said, although this was something that was causing issues in her life, she was completely consciously aware of what was happening. And, as long as it wasn't interfering with anyone else and it was, only doing damage to herself, she was at a point in her life where she was okay with that trade-off. She's like, oh no, I like the money and I am completely willing to ease up on these boundaries in order to get that money. Mm-hmm. And she did have a stopping point. Like she had a point where it's like, okay, I won't go, I'll go this far, but I won't go this far.
Right.
But yeah, she was like, she came by it honestly. She wasn't fooling herself. She wasn't telling herself a story about it. She was very, it was very, very well thought out thing. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, listening to a lot of her stories around this and kind of cueing into some of the archetypes, I realized that there was definitely some things in the shadow child archetype that were coming up for me that I needed to work through. And it was very much a, you don't see me. I'm not getting the kind of attention that I need sort of energy. And that really isn't a version of myself that I've been very aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's like when I was younger, both of my parents worked, so I didn't see them a whole lot. And my grandparents took care of me, and my grandmother especially, she was amazing. She was completely doting. But when my grandparents left and moved back east, that wasn't that wasn't a resource that I had anymore. And I was kind of left to start doing things on my own. And as much as I appreciate the independence that it gave me, it was definitely interesting to kind of wake up to but you also really missed all the attention that you got from your grandma, especially grandma and grandpa, but grandma especially. And I'm like, yeah, I really did. And I think there was a lot of times where I had a lot of resentment because I wasn't being shown that anymore. And, it wasn't technically their fault. It's like they had to do what they had to do, the same way we have to do what we have to do as adults to just make a living. And it was just one of those things where I think very early on, I built up a very heavy resentment around the fact that I wasn't getting the attention anymore. I didn't feel special anymore. And I had to do all the things for myself. And I really wanted other people to do things for me. And that's not necessarily a bad thing to want to have, times when people do things for you. There's got to be a balance. But I think when an idea kind of sticks way back in your head and you start building, certain situations around it, and if it's a resentment that you haven't faced yet, that's kind of waiting out, hanging out in the wings and throwing situations into the mix to try to get your attention.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wow, I have to realize that like I played an active role in that.
Yeah.
It's not just my parents' issue. It's not just something that they did. I didn't have very much compassion or understanding for what they were going through. So, and I wasn't vocal at all about what my needs were at that time. I didn't have the tools to do that.
Sure. Of course not.
As kids, who there aren't very many kids out there that are, comfortable enough in themselves to say, hey, I want more attention. I need more of your time. I want to feel special.
That's a mature response. Children throw tantrums. Children
and fits.
Break things. Children scream. That's how children are able to express those things. And if you've gotten rewarded for being a good child who doesn't do those things, then you are left without a source of expression for yourself. And you can't communicate what you need to communicate because you don't have the maturity yet because you're a literal child. You can't be expected to communicate, I need more of your time, mother and father. That's being a good adult. And even adults have a hard time with that.
But as an adult who didn't have those tools and didn't have good communication skills in that way, that becomes, this little voice that's sitting on your shoulder going, but I want my time. I want my space. Why aren't I special? Why don't I get that treatment? And it builds up and builds up and builds up.
And that is buried under another layer. The more superficial layer to that is the resentment, ironically, because it comes from the resentment that's buried under all that, right? But the way it manifests as an adult goes right back to the root, which is as resentment. There is something really interesting happening here. I can barely see it. I'm barely grasping it. It's so obvious when it comes out of my face, but I feel like there's a formula here that we could probably tap into. And if we were conscious enough to tap into that formula while we were doing it, we would have the answers that we're searching for. If resentment was the thing, so when you were little, you resented the lack of attention. But because good children got attention for being good, and good was defined as not throwing tantrums, not being difficult, not being a spoiled brat, whatever the story is, you didn't even have a chance for that resentment to ever consciously manifest.
Well, yeah, and I did all of those things. I was the good child. I
I
was
know. That's what I'm saying.
the child that didn't get into any trouble but I was expected. It was kind of like, oh, she does so well on her own. We'll just leave her to her own devices.
Right.
And in turn, I was like, but I'm doing all the right things. Why aren't
Why
I
aren't you
getting
paying attention?
rewarded for it?
Yeah.
So I got gypped, is what
Right.
little kid me is saying.
And there was no other way for that to work out ever. There was
Yeah.
no room for it to work out any other way than you were so good, it was bad for you.
Yeah. Seriously. And now there are things that I have to deal with that like I'm seeing little glimpses of that's like, oh, I know why that hurts me so much now. That hurts me so
Mhm.
much because the shadow side of the child is going all the tantrums that I didn't throw outwardly, I'm throwing inwardly.
Right.
And it's not hurting them, it's hurting me.
Of course. And the more inward it is, the more buried it is, and the more it manifests as illness.
Yeah,
Right? The
absolutely.
more it manifests physically in the body. So, like, the less tuned in you are to the fact that this paradigm ever existed in the first place, the more your body is physically going to rebel, because that's the only permission you've had to throw a tantrum, is to be ill.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's weird
Exactly.
because I've been dealing a lot with, or not dealing with because it hasn't happened, but battling a lot with the idea of using illness as escapism. I used to
Yeah.
do it when I was little. My mom would always say there was a specific time of the school year that I always got overwhelmed, and she could count on me being sick for 2 to 3 weeks at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I swear, I think you do it on purpose. And she was probably right. A part of me, a subconscious part that I had no clue about, probably was trying to escape whatever was happening during those times.
Oh
And
yeah.
it would be very bad illness, like strep throat and tonsillitis. Um, and I don't remember what was happening in school. And I could never see a pattern because I was a kid, and what kid thinks about that way? Wasn't I
Sure.
sick this time last year? Trust my mom for counting on that, or for being able to recognize that. But there is a certain element of escapism. When you're ill, you don't have to do this or that. It's not expected of you. And
Yeah.
lately I've been feeling overwhelmed by life, and I've been wanting to escape. And I don't have, I think some people probably have vacation mindset when they're looking to escape. I've never had that because my family was not a vacation family. So
Mm-hmm.
that's not an option for me. So what's an option for me? Well, if I'm sick in bed, nobody can expect me to text them back. Nobody can expect me to talk on the phone. Nobody can expect me to come up with semi-interesting Instagram posts every day. Nobody,
Yeah.
it's like I can dismiss myself. The irony being that as soon as I get sick, I double down on everything I need to do to make
Absolutely.
sure that if the sickness gets worse, and this takes us back to that wave of fear being, how bad is this going to get? If the sickness gets worse, then at least I've got a little bit of time to give myself leeway in the future that may or may never happen. The
Yeah.
whole thing is so fucking insane.
Yeah.
It's never going to make sense.
And that was definitely a part of I mean, I have been a sick child. I mean, I've been sick all of my life. I've always had illness, and it's usually not just a little illness. It's like, we're going to seriously take you out kind of illness. So, that definitely falls in line with that. Like, that really was the only time that I did spend what I would say, well, I don't even know if I can call it quality time, but that's really the only time that I had with my parents where it felt like, if I was sick enough, if I was injured enough, then they kind of had to stop what they were doing and put all of the attention on me. And I loved that attention. I absolutely loved that attention. I don't deny that at all. But is it healthy? No, it's not a healthy thing at all.
Well, and it's a
Oh,
lie. What?
the victim. The victim
Oh,
is the
got
other
it.
archetype. And that rolls kind of right in with that shadow aspect of the child.
Mm-hmm.
The shadow aspect of the victim is, well, they didn't care enough. They didn't care enough. I received poor treatment. And sure, as if you have a shadow child aspect inside telling you all of these things of how it's so miserable because it didn't have the love that it needed, of course that rolls into victimhood. Like, where else is that going to go? Of course
Mm-hmm.
that's going to reinforce that kind of next stage.
And the trick to the victim is, what's even worse about that mentality is that the victim assumes that whatever hurt them was on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the bad part of the victim. And I think collectively, we are really steeped in victimhood right now, that the assumption is whoever disagrees with you is doing it to endanger you.
Yeah. The shadow aspect of the victim has zero compassion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, you crossed me.
Mm-hmm.
You did, you did me wrong, and you're going to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
The shadow aspect of the victim wants recompense, and it'll take it however it can get it.
Which means it'll turn around and victimize.
Yeah, exactly. And it'll just show up in ways that you don't expect, or ways that you don't mean to. There's none of us are perfect. And there are always going to be things that pop up in our lives that need to have that deeper look. And this is really, as we're going into a time where we're really meant to create and bring in really pure energy to help manifest wherever we're going next. These are all of those things that are kind of hanging out in the background that are like, okay, if you don't recognize this, and it's not a punishment, but if you don't recognize this, the likelihood of you continuing to carry that on and put that energy into whatever you're dealing with next, it's going to continue to slow down your process. Because every time you say, no, I don't want to work on that right now, I have other things that I would like to accomplish, I don't have time for that, I don't want to look at that right now, I don't want to feel that right now. Basically what you're saying to the universe is, I need more time.
Mm-hmm.
I need more time to sit in this energy, and I don't want to change so much all at once, and
Mm-hmm.
so slow it down. And I'm at a point where I'm like, I don't want to slow it down. Even if it feels like absolute shit, let's get it going. Let's have the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. Let's put it all out on the table. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. Because absolutely, no, I don't want to take that with me into my next step. I
Mm-hmm.
would much rather have a healthy relationship with that part and move forward without that history hanging on to me and bogging me down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something else that she went over as well. When she started talking about manifestation and creation, one of the things that she brought up is, how we're receiving some of that energy. She's like, if you get those, pay attention to those wild, crazy ideas that seem like they pop into your head out of nowhere. And you're like, what is this? Like, why, why would I come up with this crazy thing? Like, how would I even put, like, what is this even about? Like, I don't understand. That's really a sign of that divine creative energy kind of coming down, and it comes down in through your eighth chakra into that kind of soul star region, and then down into your crown, and then ruminates in your third eye. Your intuition goes, oh, I don't know where that came from, but that sounds really interesting. I could probably do something with that, and you start thinking about it. And then it's kind of once it gets down to our throat chakra, because she really identified the throat chakra as a place of kind of the beginning of creation. Because once you actually start talking about it and giving, that's kind of a portion of life force energy, is speaking about something, giving life to it. That's where you start to give life to it, is once you speak it out loud. And then, if it makes it down to your heart and lights up your heart, and your heart is like, yes, this feels like a good idea, then you kind of have to start contending with the solar plexus. And the solar plexus is where all of those shadow aspects are hanging out, waiting to throw a wrench in the works, because that's but how in the hell am I going to do that? Where am I going to get the money for that? Who's going to back this? What kind of skills do I have? And if you can't get that energy going and continuing down into those lower chakras, down to the root where you can actually seed it, chances are it's not going to happen. You're going to put the stop on it somewhere. So, there's this huge cycle of, and I'm trying to remember what tipped me off to this in the first place, but there's this huge cycle of, kind of getting things like that working, starting to receive messages, and then, putting the brakes on them at some point. Okay, it was the slowing things down. That's what she was kind of talking about. She's like, whenever you see somebody who's like, seems like they can come up with an idea and then, right away, boom, 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 all the things line up and they make it happen and it's super quick. And you're like, how the hell? That's because they've had those conversations with those shadow sides of themselves and have said, I'm not speaking with you. I'm not giving you any energy. I'm not giving you, I'm not feeding you. I'm not giving you any spiritual nutrition. You're just going to have to go away now. This is where we part ways. And it really takes a lot of trust and a lot of faith to go into those next phases. But as long as those other aspects are still talking to you and they still hold your attention, that process slows down so that you can actually have that conversation and decide where you are with that. And that made a lot of sense to me, because, I could definitely see the places in my life where I'm like, oh yeah, I've talked myself out of lots of things. And that's kind of where it starts with me. And I do have throat chakra issues. I've had throat chakra issues for most of my life. I've either been shy and didn't want to speak up. I didn't want to, tell my parents, but I want more of you. Screw all of like I remember Christmas time. I was not a kid that asked for things because I didn't want things. I wanted their time. I wanted their energy. I wanted their love. I wanted their presence. I didn't want, presents, not presents. And instead I got presents.
Right.
As, lots of things to kind of placate me under the tree. And it's like, if I look back at it now, I can see where in my little kid head, I was thinking, do you have any idea how lonely this makes me feel?
Right.
Because now I'm just getting another set of dolls, another thing to distract me. And I don't want the distraction. I want the relationship. So, wrapping my head around that now as an adult, that's a lot.
It makes you grieve for that child because she wasn't heard. She wasn't heard by them. She wasn't heard by her environment. She wasn't heard even by herself, because it's like the silent scream.
Yeah.
And we are all living with a silent scream inside of us.
Sure. So, so now it is, how much are you going to talk yourself out of? Because that's just not an area where you have a lot of practice. And I do have gifts surrounding that area. And I don't use them to their full potential because I still have fear around that area. I still have uncomfortableness around that area. I still have those shadow aspects going, but if you open your mouth, are you going to say something dumb? Are people going to understand you? If you sing out loud, are you going to hit a wrong note? It's like, how perfect can you be? And it's not about perfection. And I understand that from a logical standpoint, but all of those little aspects that creep in, that have all of those stories about all of the situations that you've seen before. And that's kind of the other thing that she mentioned, was that, when you're looking for those divine ideas, look for something that you have no history with. Those things are like, I don't have any training in that. I've never done anything like that before. How am I going to do that when I've never done anything like that before? No, this is perfect because you have no history around it. And when those archetypes try to come up with something, they're hitting walls. They have nothing to say about it because there's no history there. There's no scars to remind you of in that. So, look for those crazy, wild ideas of, I've never done anything like that before. How am I going to figure that out? It's like, no, that's your perfect opportunity. Because
so like a podcast?
So like a podcast. Yeah. And I was
exercise your throat chakra by doing a podcast.
By doing a podcast, by putting out all of your crap in years and years and years of going through things, so that other people, and do it for the right reasons. Do it so that other people can identify and maybe have that same, that little bit of awakening, that little conscious sliver that all of a sudden gets ignited because you mentioned it and they resonated with that. They found something in that they can relate to. Yeah, that's huge. Mm-hmm. So I'm absolutely 1000% grateful for this and this time. But yeah, that's where I that's where I started diving in a couple of weeks ago. And I think I'm trying to remember. I think I have one more chapter left in her book. I think I'm almost done. And she's interesting. She's not going to be for everybody. She is definitely a straight shooter. She doesn't have one particular belief set or religion that she follows, but she does use Christianity a lot in this book. So if it's something that you think you're interested in and you want to listen to, and maybe you have issues around that, expect to be triggered by that. And she says, if you have a difficult time with Christianity, she brings it up a lot.
Got it.
Not because it's something that she necessarily subscribes to as like her thing, but she uses it as an example a lot. And I can understand why, because especially like this book was written in, I think, 2000. So especially at that time, you got to think about the amount of people who were probably just starting to dip their toes into a more metaphysical world and outlook, and probably had those deep roots in Christianity. And I'm sure she was using that as a way to be relatable and relate these, the stories that she had back to them. So I could definitely see that, but I could also see areas where I'm like, ooh, man, for the person who's not ready to hear that yet, or that is not, cool with that line of conversation, that's going to be a big, abort, abort. And it's like, if you can see your way past that, there's some really great insights there. So I do still, even with that being thrown in the mix, I still do recommend that. And then, yeah, I've been kind of diving into other practices, getting back into like meditations. I found Insight Timer.
Sure.
which is kind of a cool app. The thing that I think I like most about that is it asks you kind of where you're at with your, are you sad? Are you angry? How are you feeling right now? And then after you've done the meditation, are you still feeling that way? It gives you an opportunity to kind of check in with yourself and ask those sometimes hard questions of, do I feel like it did anything for me? And it's not that there's a right or wrong answer. It just tells you how much work you still have to do. That there's, still more there that needs to come out or be acknowledged. And then breath work. I've been doing breathwork meditations for the last few mornings too, which I was really kind of amazed at because I haven't done anything like that in a while to the extent of what I'm doing now. And I'm finding that a lot of the stuff that's kind of been brought up over the last couple of weeks is really settling into the heart area. So if I'm doing breath work where it's like breath through the lower abdominals and then a breath through the heart and then out through the mouth, I'm getting caught in the heart chakra. Like that breath
What does it
is
feel
harder.
like to get caught? What does it feel like to
It
get caught in
feels like the breath doesn't want to come out. It feels like I'm closing my chest off, like I'm kind of compressing that area and can't get that breath out. Like I spent the first day that I did it, I spent probably a good 15 minutes of I think it's like a 35-minute video crying because I could feel like how trapped I felt in that area. Like, oh, there's some like deep shit happening there. Like it just doesn't want to open, which is an odd feeling for me because usually I feel like my heart space is fairly open. But
okay, but crying is a release. So what were you releasing through the crying?
I think I was definitely working on some of that inner child, that shadow child that's trapped there, and those aspects that are still feeling neglected in some way and closed off
Protected.
because
Trying to protect themselves.
Trying to protect themselves, exactly.
Yeah.
So
well, it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and that amongst dealing with physical stuff and other stuff is not fun.
Right.
It's not fun. You're getting a very interesting side of me this evening because I'm on a lot of muscle relaxers. And I have, over the last several months, I have developed a lot of issues in my neck, left shoulder, left arm. And usually it only gets triggered in certain positions, but because I've started doing like physical therapy work for it, and I've been given exercises to do, and they're doing like physical manipulation in that area, I have been, for like the last week, I have been pretty much migraine every day and a whole lot of pain. So we're backing off on the physical portion, like the exercise portion, and they're doing just more of the manipulation, but they're doing it like a much kind of toned down version, because I have so many nerve clusters that are like just completely heightened right now, and muscles that are so tight. Like I don't even think I realized.
Did a doctor say why? And I guess my other question is, from the other side, from the spiritual side, what is it about the left side? What is it? Why is it boom, 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 all the way down the left side? What is it that you're holding, or can you
Left
say?
side is maternal generally. Like I can speak to you in general terms.
Mm-hmm.
Left side is generally a maternal. That's your maternal side. So anything that would have to do with mom or mom's side. And I definitely do have things, to work on with my mom. My mom is super loving, but she also tends to, like, she gets really upset and emotional. Like if I tell her about something that's going on with me, she immediately gets so upset and emotional that she kind of makes herself sick. And then I'm worried about her. And then I get frustrated because she stole my thunder. Like if I'm
Yeah.
being super honest about it, if I'm
Sure.
acknowledging that shadow part of the child, but it's my turn. It's my
Mm-hmm.
turn to you're supposed to be comforting me, and I immediately want to turn around and comfort you,
Yeah.
and I can't handle that.
Yeah. And
So,
I think for all of us children who, for whatever reason, took it upon themselves to parent their parents, that's the case.
mhm. Oh yeah, definitely. And the more we have the opportunity to kind of meet that portion of ourselves and go, wow, that's a thing that's really living inside of me that has some like really not nice feelings, and it really has zero compassion.
Yeah.
It's like you kind of have to get down to the really honest,
Well, you have to
honest
embrace
portion
it.
of that. You have to embrace it, and because you have to embrace it to be able to talk to it, to be able to say, "Look, yes, these things happened, and it sucks that those things happened, and I'm sorry that those things happened." But you also have to understand that there's another side to that story too, and the other side to that story is, look, you had a person who didn't have the tools to deal with what they were dealing with, and they had a lot of things on their plate, and can you understand that? Can you see that? Can you appreciate that you were basically going through the same things? They needed that kind of attention, and so they couldn't give that attention to you. They didn't know how. They hadn't been given that. So, there's that perspective switch that kind of has to happen in order for you to really, part of me wants to say complete that work, but I don't know if we're ever truly done with that work. I think we're always going to find more shadow aspects of ourselves. If I've lived 1,000 lifetimes, then there's 1,000 different versions of that shadow aspect that has to get integrated. And that sounds like a lot of work, but I think as we start to really acknowledge it and see it, it's easier to see it when it's hanging out in the background, and it's easier to kind of go, okay, look, this isn't something that we're going to feed anymore. This isn't, this is, I'm not sitting in that space anymore. So nice try,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not a game I'm willing to play anymore. And it takes a lot of stuff to kind of move through to get yourself to the other side of that. And I'm definitely in the middle of it right now, but I know that I'm going to look back and be grateful that I did have the opportunity to see it and speak with it and come to an understanding of understanding, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we do ourselves. I mean, we come by it naturally, but the idea that there is a beginning and a middle and an end to something
Hmm.
is a very, we're doing ourselves a disservice when we think of things that way. There is only
Yeah.
cycles. And one cycle moves into the next cycle, moves into the next cycle, moves into the next. It's a spiral. And if you see a beginning and a middle and an end, what you're seeing is you're seeing a snapshot
Yeah.
of a greater timeline. And so again, it goes into, you have to allow yourself to go through these cycles. And I think it would be silly to think that we would ever be done with that work. That's the only reason we're here, is to do
Yeah.
that work. So there is no, am I ever going to be healed? Well, you'll be more and more healed. But if healed for you means there's an end, then no. It's not going
You're
to end. No.
you're either in a place where you're not healing at all because you have anchored yourself into a particular place in your life where things are moving so slowly that you are absolutely denying every bit of change that can possibly happen, and you're super comfortable where you're at, or you're continually healing. And that's
Right.
going to look different in every turn of that spiral. your healing is going to look different. And sometimes it's going to be, oh wow, that came up and I faced it and wow, that seemed easy. And then you're going to have times where it's like, oh my hell, seriously, when is this going to be over? And please don't put any more on my plate. Like, I'm all filled up. Sorry. You're going to have to wait in line because, yeah, all the seats are taken at this particular show here. Yeah. So, and I think I'm definitely at that place right now where I'm like, please no more. I'm good. I'm ready to, like, hey, if you want me to hand things over, guess what? I am so about handing things over. Let me offload all of the things. I'm good. I don't want to take anything. Nope. I really don't want to hold on to any of that. None of that is helping me right now. I want to get rid of absolutely all of it. Please do show it to me first. Let me acknowledge it, say my piece, and then you can have it. And you can do whatever you want with it. Please never bring that to me again.
Of course, when you undertake a purge of that magnitude, it comes with difficulties.
It definitely comes with difficulties.
Yeah.
But on the other end of that is, like, as much as I know that this period is super difficult, I also know that it is creating a contrast that is going to make it a whole lot easier to appreciate certain aspects of my life that maybe I just couldn't appreciate before because I was so fixated on one or two things here or there that I couldn't look around and say, hey, like, these one or two things are bugging me today, but look at everything else that's happening. Like, everything else is, it's a beautiful day outside. I had the opportunity to do this, and this today. I had the means to do this. And there are just certain things that, I can look back on and go, I really didn't appreciate that in a way that, like, I wish I would have taken the time to appreciate that more, or at least say it out loud or express to others how much I appreciated, like, a certain time or something that they did or a relationship that I had. Yeah. So there's that. And I think, this particular time will make me a whole lot more aware of that.
I feel like there's another battle going on, and I don't know how many people can relate to this, but it feels like there is within me. I'm kind of tuned out right now. Tuned out is kind of the wrong way to say it. I'm in between right now. I went through a period around September where I was really tuned in to, like, what you're going through right now with the giant purge, a whole bunch of fears coming up to deal with them head on. And then that kind of died down and I got into a pattern where I was still I was uncomfortable on a regular basis, but not so uncomfortable that I couldn't handle it. It was a discomfort that I could handle.
Sure.
And now it feels as though everything's just sort of, for me, it's slow, but the world is speeding up and it's causing a kind of entropy that I don't really know how to quantify. When I look at it, my logic mind can't really see. It's almost like, gosh.
Well, that makes sense to me because, again, we're going into the solstice here in the Northern Hemisphere, the winter solstice, and the winter solstice is really about that liminal space and being in that liminal space and that growth and sitting in the darkness and letting what needs to take seed really, start to germinate and grow. And when you see the light's going to be a whole lot brighter. And that's when, you can kind of break through and come into and start receiving that creation energy a little more clearly because you have spent that time in the dark. You've been able to focus on something more internal and at a slower rate.
It provides contrast.
It definitely provides contrast. And I think there's different there's different forms of that. I'm going through a very extreme form of that right now, in pulling up all of these things that I've needed to deal with. You've kind of already been through a lot of that, so you're
For
sitting in
now.
more of that. Well, so you're sitting in that,
I'm in a different part of the
and
cycle.
you're in a different part of the cycle. Exactly. And so, things might be going fabulously for you right now. And that's not to say that
Things
that's
aren't
wrong.
going. Things aren't going. Things are not going. It's not fabulous. It's not horrible. It's nothing. Like it's just it is the definition of liminal space where I'm almost paranoid that I'm missing. Like, am I so deep in denial that I'm not seeing it?
No, no. And I'm not speaking to you specifically. I'm saying in general to the people
Mm.
listening, there might be certain people out there who are not feeling any of this, and that's fine too. Um, you might be experiencing it in a different way. So, everybody has their own thing that they need to gather out of any of these cycles of time, and yeah, this is what we're here for. This is what we're here to do. And I really do feel like, for those of us who are really going through the stuff right now, or who have recently been through that, um, this is just an opportunity to really dig in and clear out the closet. And you kind of have to ask yourself, kind of like if you were moving and you were getting rid of things, it's like, what do I actually want to box up and take with me? What do I want to spend my energy, my time carefully packing away, only to have to haul it around, unpack it into a new place? Like, is that going to fit my life, going forward? Or does it really not fit my life anymore? If it really doesn't fit your life anymore, then you got to figure out what you want to do with it. So I'm definitely in that place right now. It's like, what do I want to keep moving forward with? And what am I really, really, really ready to, have words with and leave some things behind? There are definitely things that's like, okay, that aspect of myself does not need to move with me in the future. I am done with that aspect. I have learned that lesson.
It does feel like the big gift of this year is stripping down,
Mm-hmm.
taking away things that even and maybe sometimes especially the things you thought you needed the most.
Mm-hmm.
They're being, and sometimes it feels like they're being torn away. Like that's the
Yeah.
only way they could be taken from you because you had such a white knuckle grip on it. And I
Mm-hmm.
say you had, but I'm speaking just as much about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've definitely felt that in this year, that lose, 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 lose. It's just a minefield of loss, it feels
Mm-hmm.
like. Not that there weren't gains too. And I
Mm-hmm.
do find that I am more able to appreciate the gains, that
Mm-hmm.
there is more of an energy of balance in my perception between loss and gain, even though I've lost or felt like I lost some pretty big things that were big pieces of my story
Yeah.
went away. And in them going away, I think what's happening is the aspect of me that always feared them not being there is waiting for the inevitable crumbling of my life that was the basis for that fear to begin with.
Sure.
And hopefully not to jinx myself, because there's still that fear still exists in me. It's not that it doesn't
Sure.
exist, it just doesn't rule my stars anymore.
Yeah.
But to be bold enough to say that the reason those things were taken away was so that I could see that those fears were not valid
Yeah.
is just being able to say that is a huge step. Granted, it's a huge
Sure.
step. I didn't achieve the step. It was forced upon me. I wasn't like the good spiritual worker who, threw caution to the wind. I didn't take huge risks. I felt very cajoled into it, but that doesn't mean that I didn't benefit from it or that I didn't do enough work to see the benefits of it.
Well, and I was just going to say, you do have to give yourself a little bit of credit, though, because you have to be open to doing that work for that work to come to you. If you're not ready for it, there's the old cliche of you're not going to be given anything that you can't handle,
Mm-hmm.
but it's true. Like if you've reached a point in your life where like shit is blowing up and hitting the fan, it's blowing up and hitting the fan because you are capable of seeing yourself through it, even when you don't feel like it,
Mm-hmm.
even when it feels like absolutely everything is falling apart around you. That's kind of where, that's where you get to play with that whole free will business, and kind of decide, do I want to continue to bend the law of attraction in favor of living through a lesson in order to gain an experience and a perspective that's, going to show me something new about myself? Or am I ready to say, I have faith and trust that I am absolutely capable of making it through this, and I am willing to release certain aspects. I'm willing to have those difficult conversations and release certain things.
I think I've tapped into at least a small piece, if not a huge piece. I'm not sure how big the piece is, but I think I've tapped into
Okay.
a piece that I've been trying to grasp for a while, where I
Okay.
think that my inner control freak is out of a job.
Yeah.
And I think
Cereal.
that's who I keep wondering. That's who keeps making me wonder, am I in such a bad state of denial that I'm going to get blindsided because the inner control freak doesn't have anything to do anymore? And she was always so busy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And now that she's not busy, she's like, are you aware that I exist and yet I'm doing nothing? And it
And
makes me paranoid.
well, but it also sounds like you're ready to maybe have that conversation with that portion of yourself, which really is the saboteur. That's
Yeah,
that's the shadow part of that saboteur. And you're
absolutely.
willing to say, you know what? You are out of a job. I am kicking you to the curb.
Hmm. I'm not
I'm not
kicking her to the
feeding.
curb. I'm not, because here's the thing. Here's what I believe about that. It's those aspects just need to be transmuted. They don't need to be kicked to the curb. I will Kicking things to the curb is what got me in this trouble in the first place. So I love her for doing what she thought was best for me. And I'm going to embrace her and work on integrating her. I don't know what integrating her looks like. In fact, what I'm being told right now, and it's weird because my guides have been eerily quiet.
Mhm.
Like, could you please speak? What is happening right now? But what I just heard was, I lost it. I
Well, I'll
lost
tell
it.
you what, maybe this will help because before we started, I was really kind of pulled to take out cards. So I'm sitting over here doing
Oh,
my
that's what that sound
lazy
is. I'm like, what
shuffle.
is this slippy sound I'm hearing?
Okay, this is very much a you card. Like I feel you all over this one. This is from it's actually from your deck. It's the Lantern Oracle
Oh,
that I borrowed from you.
don't read it. I don't,
No, no, no. I was
unless
just going to do
there's
the little blurb.
a
So the
little blurb.
little, yeah,
You
there's
mean
a
on the
little
card
blurb.
itself?
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah, there's a
okay.
little
Okay,
blurb on
cool.
the card.
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah. So this one is Spirit Self. Be who you are as you are.
Mm-hmm. Show me. Show me. I want to see the picture.
And I
We'll
love
post it
it.
to Instagram for everybody. Oh, she's pretty. I like her hair.
She's got a lot of water energy.
Yeah.
She's got a lot of mermaid flow to her, but it also looks like she's holding kind of a golden apple. So she's got wisdom to give.
Yeah. Well,
And it is kind of a fun juxtaposition because even though she's very watery, like her clothes, her makeup, even her expression is kind of dark. And so it's this really fun juxtaposition of, here's this kind of darker portion that has this very golden piece of wisdom that they're handing over. And that is very much, a meeting in the middle. And by kicking her to the curb, I don't mean get rid of all of her. I mean, it's time for that aspect to stop being the dominant aspect. It's time to invite the divine portion of that aspect in. Mm-hmm. And that aspect allows you to say, I don't need to function that way anymore. I don't need you coming at me, tapping me on the shoulder all the time, saying, hey, hey, hey. But there's this thing, that's bubbling out in the background. You haven't touched this yet. You haven't put your hands on it yet. You haven't gotten your finger hold on this yet. Here, let me help you. Let me show you all the ways that, that you can, try to manipulate this so that
or all the ways it could go wrong,
or all the ways that it can go wrong so that you don't even try.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that definitely kind of falls in line with that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if anything else wants to come up. I feel like that's not the only. I feel like maybe at least 2 or 3 cards wanted to come out. So here's another one that's kind of. Oh, got a twofer? I got a twofer. So we'll see. Ooh. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Thank you, cards. So this next one is the weeping wound. You are not your wounds.
True.
So here's that one. So this is...
Ooh, she's bloody. She's all cut down the middle, and she's wearing a white cloak over her shoulders, and she's bare-chested, and she's got blood coming out of one eye.
And she's...
left eye, mind you. Just saying. Left side again.
And holding her hand over her heart area and trying to kind of close and protect that open gash. But cloaked in that white light, cloaked in the protection that she needs. Mm-hmm. You are always surrounded by guides and, other forces that you have put into play long before you ever made this contract that are, here to show up for you, that really need you to say, this is where I need your help. And I'm willing, or not willing, but I am ready. I'm ready to take on whatever the thing is that I need to take on, and ready to, in order to shift and change this. And I need your guidance and I need your help through it. Give me the grace to move through it. I'll meet you halfway. And, but I need that little bit of help and guidance to get through it. Mm-hmm. Oh, hell yeah. The cards are on fire. And the next one is forgiveness. Hurt blocks our light.
Yeah.
And that's another gorgeous image of being cloaked in darkness, but having light pour through. It looks like light pouring through a window. Mm-hmm. And she's kind of catching it in her heart space, but it's also coming across her face diagonally, and it's hitting her throat. And then she's kind of catching it in her heart and kind of bathing in it. So yeah, I think all of those definitely apply, because one of the first things that I know I was kind of alerted to do when I was made aware of that shadow aspect of the child was that I needed to forgive myself. I needed to forgive myself for holding on to that all this time. It's really easy to kind of get in a space where something dark about you, or something that you wish didn't exist about you, bubbles up to the surface. And it's really easy to, go into a tailspin of either self-pity or self-doubt or just self-loathing. Why would you do this to yourself? This is ridiculous. Come on. why are we hanging on to this like this? You don't need this. But, you don't know what you know until you know it.
You
So
don't know what you don't know.
you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a big one. And saying, I forgive you. I forgive you for not seeing it, and
Well,
for
and when you're able to do that for yourself, you're able to do it for others, because that
yeah.
is literally self-love. And you cannot show other people love until you know how to love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Once you say to yourself, especially to an aspect that you've been hiding away, that you've been constricting, that you've been trying to squelch or bottle up, these imprisoned aspects are largely what is in control of our lives.
Oh
And
yeah.
when they come to the surface and we've been bottling them up inside, we've convinced ourselves that we've at least done a good job at keeping them small. But what we've really been doing is feeding them, because they're trying to get out. So they're just getting stronger and stronger so that you can't deny them anymore. And when you can finally look at them and go, I'm so sorry you experienced something that made you behave this way. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
sorry you had to go through something that made you feel you had to protect yourself like this. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry that no one ever came back for you. I'm so sorry that I abused and neglected you because our parents abused and neglected us in this way. Not that they meant to, not that our parents are bad for doing that. Our parents passed on their wounding to us. They didn't know how to do anything differently. They
Yeah.
weren't trying to hurt us. Parents don't have you and then try to hurt you unless they are first hurt themselves. So once we
Yeah.
can see in ourselves that this aspect that's been submarining our entire life exists, and once we're able to see that it exists because we created it, and we can take responsibility for that, you've got self-empowerment there, you've got self-forgiveness there. There's nothing more empowering than that. And that's what's going
Absolutely.
to help you release your inner control freak, because the inner control freak is the one who's been holding the reins so tightly on all these aspects that have been building up all your life that you've been trying to
Mm-hmm.
bottle up. Someone had to guard the gateway, someone had to be the prison guard. And the inner control freak is the prison guard of all these
Yeah.
aspects. So as we start to see these aspects and admit that, yeah, I hated my father for this reason, hated him. He's an asshole. And I'm not sad that he's dead. When we can say stuff that sounds completely horrible and toxic and then forgive ourselves for it, then that piece of us that thought those things is shown compassion and is able
Yeah.
to model compassion for the person that they used to hate and think of as only their abuser.
Yeah.
Once we show compassion to ourselves, we can show it to others. And when we show it to others, others begin to desire to model that behavior as opposed to lashing out or bullying or whatever the case may be.
It breaks all the walls down. It breaks those, all of those defensive postures that you
Unity.
take.
That's the road to
It
unity.
absolutely. And there was another one that jumped out as I was kind of shuffling them and putting them away. Oh, great. And so this one is enough. You were born enough.
Yeah.
And this one is really cool. The gal is actually draped and she's like in a very tight fitting. It almost looks like she has mostly blue skin, but her like part of her forearms and hands and her head are flesh tone. And then she's kind of draped in this red fabric, and then she has these beautiful angel wings. And it was really interesting. In one of Carolyn's stories, she mentioned somewhere, she was talking about when we see, when you're sensitive and you see humans that appear angelic out in your everyday world, and you can see physical wings. And she made this kind of observation that oftentimes what that really is that person's ability to kind of harness that source light and bring it down into the rest of their body, and they literally glow, and that glow kind of creates wings. So if you're, in a place where you're picking up on energy like that, that's very often the way it comes across, is as that kind of wing kind of aspect and physicality. So I think that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Well,
that was a lot to unpack.
and I was it, again, being in this liminal space, as it almost sounds like an excuse, but I'm not connected to much of anything right now. And I'm having a difficult time grounding, not grounding. Gosh, how do I explain this? Grounding into a 3D understanding of things. I'm in my body. I'm physically grounded. I'm unable to sort of tune in and stay tuned into conversations, to other people. I just don't, even into stories that pop into my own head about life and about being afraid of things or not being afraid of things, whatever the case may be. There have been a lot of old memories coming up out of the blue that I hadn't thought about in years. They come and go. Everything's very fluid. And so was that a lot to unpack? I'm not sure. It almost sounded like we didn't say anything to me. Did we say something? Did we?
I'm pretty sure we did. I felt like we did. But of course, I'm also going through a lot of stuff right now, and I did a lot of the talking this time. So, but that happens when you have a lot of shit that you're dealing with.
And I think that that's really interesting, because I think it just is another reflection of how we're in two different places, but they still coalesce.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's really cool. We are headed into the very last throes of the holiday season. And I'd just like to remind everybody that as we get close to possibly spending time with family and trials and tribulations that might come up as a result of being expected or feeling expected or required to do too much, set your boundaries, make your choices. Do I really want this? Do I really want this? Every time you hear yourself say, I don't want, change that into a, what do I want? What am I saying to myself when I say I don't want? What do I want instead? Because if you're only going so far as to say I don't want, you're not doing enough work on your own behalf. You're not helping yourself out with an I don't want. That's just the first step that alerts you to the next step. And the next step is, I want it to look like this. I want my Christmas to look like this. I want the next days of Hanukkah to look like this. I want the New Year to look like this. I want to spend it with these people. I want to be quiet in my cave. Whatever the case may be, if you're not at a place in your life where you can actually make those decisions on your behalf because it feels too risky, at least let them come up and be acknowledged.
Yeah. Set your boundaries around interactions, and how much energy do you have to spend? How much energy do you have to give? I want to be engaged in situations that provide energy for me, that help create energy around me, that make me feel creative, and that help me to feel nurtured and cared for. And if the situation isn't going to provide that for me, then I do not wish to participate in that situation.
Mm-hmm. And for my holiday, the rest of the holiday season, I want quiet. I just want to be quiet. I want to be quiet within myself. I'm just into deep listening right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I want to do. And so unfortunately for everyone else, that might mean that I'm not there when they need me, but I have to. My work right now is being there for myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not something I've ever really done for an extended period of time in my life. I've been there for a lot of people and loved every one of them. But now I need to figure out how to be there for myself, because that is completely new and I don't even have the training wheels off yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of us are in that space. It's going to be interesting. It's not going to be easy going into the new year. It's not going to be easy to feel like you have some sort of footing. It's not going to feel like a safe space right away. It's not going to feel like, you can just float on in. It's going to be bumpy, and you're going to have a difficult time figuring out where to land. And that's okay. I think my biggest lesson to myself right now is just trusting that I am a good navigator, that I can land, that I will find footing, even if it's not easily presented to me, and that I am being helped and guided even on the days when it doesn't feel like it. And if it really doesn't feel like it, then I kind of have to turn it back on myself and say, how are you blocking that information from coming in? What kind of a space are you sitting in right now? How much of that can you shift? And, how much can you open that back up and allow back in? Because I definitely know that there are times when I cut it off for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just dive too far into a hole to really see it or hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it's how patient can I be with myself to allow the part of me that's going through the difficulty, because it's usually when I'm in a state of difficulty that I kind of disconnect and don't hear the guides as well. And I've gotten to a point where I allow the difficulty and I allow the disconnect because I understand it's part of the process. I don't need the answers all the time instantly. And so that's where my practice has taken me, is just allowing myself not to know.
Oh yeah. Well, the not knowing is a huge part of the lesson. It's a huge part of the work. That's the thing that is, if you allow it to, is going to nurture and foster the trust and the faith and the hope. You just have to be okay with, I know I can't see it right now. I can't see it, but I know it's there. You can't, if you spiral into the, I can't see it right now, but you don't have anything else on the counter to kind of help balance that out. You got to bring balance to it. And the balance part is, I may not be able to see it, but I have hope and faith and trust that it is there. And I know that, I am capable and I am worthy and I can receive it, even if it's not immediate, even if it's not, doesn't feel fast enough to me, even if it doesn't feel comfortable to me.
And balance is huge right now. That's just something that is on repeat for me. Regarding not only myself, but everybody who's in my life, whether their people are going through stuff, but they're okay, or it's a balance between how much of yourself do you have to give and being aware of how much you have to give versus how much you need to give to yourself. Balance between how much do I lean into ideas and perspectives versus tempering them with other ideas and perspectives. Balance between, even as simple as, being the holidays, we want to buy presents for everybody. Balance between how much can we actually do this year? Who am I this year? Am I the present giver this year? I am not the present giver this year. I'm not. I don't have it right now. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I don't have the resources in any way, shape, or form to be the present giver. Can I be okay with not fulfilling that part of my identity and realizing that really isn't a part of my identity to begin with? Can I still enjoy the aspects and ideas behind a holiday season, quote unquote, without participating in the typical rituals? Because I was a big ritual girl growing up. I was like,
absolutely,
this is part of Christmas. This has to happen. We have to do these things, A, B, C through Z, all have to get done. And I would, by Christmas Day, hate Christmas.
There needs to be parcel paper and red bows and handmade tags.
Yep, and there has to be lights everywhere. Do you see lights anywhere in my house right now? No, it is completely black. There's no Christmas around my house. There's no Yule. It's not there because I didn't have it to give to myself this year. I'm celebrating Christmas internally. I'm celebrating the holiday internally. That's how I'm doing it this year, and it's got to be good enough.
I'll be celebrating Bridget and the returning of the light. I'll be celebrating, by lighting candles in the dark and lighting some sort of pathway for new energy to come in. That's how I'll be celebrating this year. Very low key.
Very low key. Be low key. If low key is what you need, not Loki. Although, I mean, if that's what you need, more power to you. But low key, go for it. Give yourself the permission to be that person this year.
Absolutely.
I think we've done the thing.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything left. I think I'm good.
So until next year, guys, it's been awesome. It has been awesome having this podcast and that you all are tuning in to listen is amazing. And we're grateful for it every day. We're grateful for you. And we want you to feel better and get better and be better and just expand into the new year.
Absolutely. As we will as well. We'll see where the wind takes us next in the new year. That's so crazy.
Right.
Well, is this going to be season 2? Since we're going into the new year?
I don't even know why we have seasons, but apparently that's a thing that we do. So I'm going to leave that to you to decide since you're the one who started the seasons to begin with. That'll be your wheelhouse.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely think about it. And there's new things that we have kind of hanging out in the background. And so we'll see what materializes in 2023. It's going to be fun. And we definitely want you to come along for the ride. So, all the things. Our mission is to empower you. So if you have enjoyed the show, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Help us appease the algorithmic gods because it empowers us to empower others. And if you would like to stay up to date with our insights, downloads, and upcoming shows, check us out on Instagram by searching Using Our Inside Voice, all one word. And until next time, this is Jamie.
And this is Heather.
And we are using our outside voice to say stay safe, stay sovereign, and we will see you next time.